Hi, I'm Jason Michael Primrose.
And I'm Jeff Zakarski, and welcome to Gentlemen, the #1 podcast for open-hearted leadership.
Before we get started, we know you want more in the form of community. So you can follow us at Gentlemen the Podcast on Instagram or join our private group on Facebook by searching Gentlemen the Podcast. I am so excited for today's episode. We are talking about my least favorite topic, commitment. It is the scariest thing in the world for me, and I'm really excited to dive in to this conversation about it.
I'm wondering what's the actual scary thing when you say that? Because I get you're saying you're like, oh, it's my least favorite. It's the most scary. So what is the most scary about it for you?
Committing to things is because it ties into so many other things. It ties into integrity, being a person of your word, a gentleman of your word. And so I imagine that if I commit to something, then I'm responsible for it. And so maybe the actual fear is the not being able to show up for the thing fully. So that I'm not powerful enough to commit to things and then have them go the way that I want them to go. I think that's the fear.
Where did it go totally the opposite of that? Even in just the last couple weeks for you.
Are you probing right now for?
I'm totally probing right now because I'm calling you out and I'm calling you out your story out on its BS because I know that you're all about commitment. And
hey,
and I'd like to just have you call you out.
We are offering valuable comparisons to our audience. So I want people to know that I'm afraid of commitment and still know how to source it and show up for it. My commitment to publishing my novel, my commitment to us recording this podcast, those two things happening successfully at the same time is an example of commitment in its fullest form. And that also tied closely with our other topics, intention and vision. So I'll let you share how commitment is showing up for you this week. And I'm curious to hear that.
Yeah. For me this week, Matt, it has been an excellent week. And I feel like this week I am reaping the fruits of my commitment. How commitment normally goes for me is it's I'm committed to something, then I'm not committed to something. It's I'll start something and I don't stay with it for a long enough period of time to actually get anywhere with it. And what I'm really present to this week is, how this last year commitment has been really different for me in my life. It's starting to drastically change how my business looks and how my relationships are looking and how my well-being. So I'm what I'm really present to is that it wasn't that I wasn't doing anything different in any of those areas, but who I was being inside of my commitments was somebody that was being super intentional, that was being super consistent. And that was part of my commitment. My commitment was actually around consistency, around the things that I'm going to do that are going to actually move the needle. And so what I'm present to this week is, adding a couple people into my practice, my coaching practice, getting hired to do a workshop for this amazing company that I get to put on with Casey. And it's the amount of things that have moved the needle in the last 72 hours are absolutely insane. So that's where commitment is going awesome for me. And where
wait, hold on a second, because I have a question about that. So you said all this has happened in 72 hours.
Yeah.
And how long would you say your showing up has been for your commitment?
Are you asking me about like when my relationship to commitment started to shift that is creating these kind of results?
Yeah.
Or
Yes. Because
yeah.
I just want to give the audience context for like patience and like time that it's happened in 72 hours, but it actually happened in X amount of time.
Totally. Well, it reminds me of the same conversation about, somebody becomes famous overnight and their records at the top of the charts and everyone's like, "Oh man, they just came out of nowhere." And the reality is like it's not the case. Like they've been behind the scenes, like I've been behind the scenes doing the thing that you're exactly pointing to. And it does take repetition, and it does take consistency. And it takes patience and grace, like even inside of my commitment. So to give the audience a little bit of context, I feel like the results that are happening today are a culmination of a shift in my mindset in about the like early to middle of December of 2020. Before that, my relationship to commitment, like I was kind of pointing to, was like start and like run, and then I would totally fall off the rails and then I'd have to start and then fall off the rails. And like this idea of repetitive chunking, I think that's a really common thing. It's a common thing for me to take on so much at some time, almost in a way where it's a sabotage to my success. So the big shift that changed back in 2020 is I started to chunk things down really small and do those no matter what. No matter what I was feeling in the moment. If I didn't feel like it, I did it anyway. If if something showed up, I practiced saying no in the face of somebody like demanding my time. It's like, no, actually I have to do this. I've committed that I'm going to take this thing on before anything else. And it was weird. It was like, it was creating a small list of things that I was committed to on a daily basis. And I wasn't allowed to touch anything else until I did that. So where I am today is a result of basically taking the most significant items, the significant smaller chunks for me and my business, my relationship, my well-being, and doing it every day, no matter what. But the big thing that started to change it as well is because it was so simple, because it was so straightforward, at the end of every day, I could check in. I could check in and go, did I do it or did I not? And at that time, I had the opportunity to go, oh, well, I didn't do it. Am I going to do it now? Or what do I need? Where do I need support? So what it started to shine a light on is all of the stuff that was getting in my way, which for me was, not setting boundaries. It was not following my own like run of show for the day, like making a list of 6 things and then doing a totally different list of 6 things. And then somehow, this is the sarcasm, somehow being baffled at the end of the day that I wasn't making the progress that I wanted to make. I don't know. Can you relate to any of that?
I feel attacked.
Wait. You feel attacked. Why do you feel
no,
attacked?
I think it's funny. No, it's just a slang term. But yeah, one of the bigger things for me is not following my run of show. That's a big one for me that I've been working on this week, specifically. For example, well, you touched on so many great things, so I just want to double back a little bit. So one thing I heard you say was feeling a certain way and choosing something different. So what I got from that and what I've had, there's some conversation that I have had about the feeling versus the choice that we make. A lot of times we use feelings as an excuse for why we did or didn't do things, when you can feel one way and actually choose another inside of something like commitment, vision, intention. So I could feel overwhelmed or feel tired and still choose to do the thing that is triggering those feelings. because there's something bigger than that, bigger than the story about being overwhelmed, bigger than the story about being tired, and that is my commitment to the thing or my commitment to the vision. So the bigger picture. So I love that you pointed to the fact that you did it no matter how you felt. And I wonder if there's a place for grace there, but we'll just leave that where it is. And then the practice.
Well, I think even
go ahead.
I think even the grace thing is important, because the grace can start to shift how you're showing up inside of the commitment. Because I can very easily say, well, I'm gonna grip this thing and I'm just gonna plow through it, and I'm gonna do it even though I'm stressed out, even though I'm overwhelmed. But if I change how I show up, then it's not from obligation, have to, but the opportunity becomes like, oh, well, maybe I get to, like, maybe this is for me. Maybe I can do this from a place of fun and joy, as opposed to a place of, I don't know, total crapshoot, or God, this is the worst thing known to man.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely. And that kind of brings me to, okay, so what I said was, I love what you said about making a small list of things that you're committed to that you do no matter what every day, and then you get to everything else after that. I'm going to think about that one.
I'm curious, what would you put on the list? Like, if you just got to, maybe it's not set in stone, but like if you were to pick the things that you would put on the list right now, what would it be?
They'd probably be around creating content, writing. I don't write every day. Creating content, writing. I definitely work on more outreach. Like, I would just do outreach, engagement on my social. So just like commenting and supporting people. And in metrics, like actually tracking how everything's performing, so that I can use that when in conversations and pitches and things like that. And I think I would actually probably do a live every day, at least for 30 minutes, to just engage the audience around different topics and things like that.
Can I call you out the same way my coach called me out back in December?
What?
She looks at me, she's like, so when are you going to take care of you?
Oh,
like, why isn't that on the top six?
So wait, I wasn't finished.
Like the top six things you're doing.
Wait, I wasn't done yet. I wasn't done yet. Okay. And then exercise. And then definitely full night's sleep.
There it is.
And my CMOS tea. And
there you go.
At least two good meals. Right now, I haven't eaten yet a meal, and it's 1:00. And dancing. I would dance to one song for every hour that I work. So those are the things.
Sounds complicated.
No, it sounds easy. It's easy. How does it sound complicated?
Well, I'm just thinking, I'm like listening to it. I guess it's funny. I think it's my own stuff, because I think about like how I used to do that too. And I'm like, oh my God, here's this list. There's all these things, and I'm going to do all these things. And I'm like, how am I going to actually structure this in a way that feels like easy?
Well, I need to make a run of show.
Okay.
And then stick to it. But that's like I mean, of course, there's like, listening back to Gentleman episodes, and I have space for these things and time sectioned off for these things. And then I'll take a call or anything, So that goes back to the second thing you said, feeling versus action, which is the practicing saying no, like actually having hard boundaries inside of those timetables, so that it's not like, oh my God, what happened to the day? It's like, well, you didn't stick to anything that like you said you were going to do. So, so the commitment wasn't there. Now, I'll tell you that the reason the Kickstarter worked is because I was committed to its success. And that meant that I would make a video every day and I would post it across 4 different platforms, regardless of how I felt. I would do email outreach, regardless of how I felt. I mean, I was like fighting through these emails, you guys.
Yeah.
Because I really
yeah. What had that project be a project where feelings didn't get in the way?
Well, it's not that they didn't get in the way, but I actively sourced like joy in the project so that I could show up differently for the content. Like, because I could have done all of those things from stress, and I wasn't really stressed out during the campaign. Like, and that's not normal because I had a really big goal and I wasn't very close to it for a very long time. But I wasn't stressed out because I kept thinking, wow, I can't believe I raised $9,000. Wow, I can't believe I raised $18,000. Wow, I can't believe I raised $23,000. And it was like, this is crazy because there's so many people that believe in me and I'm so excited about it. And to be stressed out now is actually like a disservice. Like to bring stress into the commitment is actually a disservice to the experience itself. So the whole thing could have gone the same way, right? I could have raised over the amount. We could have launched the podcast and we could have been stressed out during that whole time, or we could be excited and curious and joyful and playful with it. And so it's just,
so which one would you choose if you had to do it again?
I would always choose being playful. I definitely felt like I think the only thing that was stressful about launching the podcast was the social stuff. And I have a lot of resistance around social management because I did it for so long and I have PTSD from it, but that's a story. And I wasn't relating to it from a place of like value and service to the audience, like that extension of like relationship, because that's how people discover the episodes. Someone saw a post and they're like, oh my God, this was so valuable. And I was like, oh yeah, because that's what we're doing. We're like having social be a place to farm people into relationship with us. And so when I started to relate to it that way, the commitment to creating social content became a lot more fun. So like I went and I made little templates, and you haven't seen them all yet, but I made templates in Canva and
nice.
Just like playing around with different things and definitions and just ways to get people thinking about what vision, intention, commitment mean to them around the commitment of like, let's build a community. So building a community is way more important than like the anxiety of writing 365 individual captions over the next however long we're, creating, for however long we have the podcast for. So, so those are examples of places that commitment have shown up in the last few weeks and specifically this week, because previously it was like a war with myself around like my fear of commitment and being able to actually powerfully show up for the things that I say I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I get that what you're sharing is your relationship to commitment. And part of what I was sharing is my relationship to commitment. And I know that everybody has a relationship to commitment. I mean, there wouldn't be all these TV shows about people that are, ready to jump into a lifelong, partnership or a marriage, or some people that are commitment phobic. Like it's a term that can get thrown around. It's like, oh wow, people don't commit to marriage because like they have this story that marriage is forever. And like, oh my gosh, like I'm committing to something forever. Like that becomes something that people have to work around, like that I have to work around, like whether it's committing to a program that's going to benefit me, committing to hiring, switching coaches, committing to taking on a podcast that I'm not going to a sunset in, 60 days. Like, the commitment is a long haul, value driven thing. And I think that's the thing that keeps me going. And you mentioned that too. The idea of what you got in touch with is that the commitment was to bring, not only to do the thing, but the commitment was to bring value. Yeah. And then when you were working on your Kickstarter, like, there was a commitment to bring joy and to bring fun and to bring play. And that had it go, it had to be a completely different experience than if we allow our overwhelm, our stress, our anxiety, our fear, our insert the Mad Lib, insert the blank there, letting that actually run it for us. I mean, I think everybody has their way that we sabotage the things that we say that we want for ourselves. And I think for me, like, the primary one, if I had to label, like, the one that I've done a lot of work around is that I blame other people. Like, oh, I can't have this thing in my life because it's their fault. And I have evidence for it. Like, I can try and prove it true, but I also have a whole basket of evidence that makes that total, like, BS. So that's the thing for me. It's like, but again, it's avoiding being fully committed, avoiding being fully responsible for the result. Because if I'm fully responsible for the result and I can't blame anybody else, then there's only one person left to blame. So I kind of try and do this dance around it. So that's how it shows up for me. And I've done so much work around it, and it doesn't show up nearly as powerfully as it has in the past. But I'm curious, like, what's the number one sabotaging behavior that gets in the way of your commitment?
I just want to go back to the word blame and responsibility because of the difference between those two things. And it's interesting because whether I'll say whether even though it's not mine to own, but whether my relationship with, it does show up for me in that way, but it's not my number one. Whether my relationship is it's got to be someone's fault, meaning someone needs to be to blame, then the blame is still the weapon, whether I'm pointing it at someone else or I'm pointing it at myself. So that said, I think that my default is actually to blame myself. So it is whenever there's a problem, whenever there's a breakdown, whenever there's something happening, I blame myself. And I shame myself. So that actually has me wary of commitment, because then I think that if I would make a commitment, that I ultimately will not be able to fulfill that commitment, and I'll be in that shame spiral. So what's missing in that dynamic is support and accountability and grace and patience and like all of those things. And so, yeah, I'm not like the kind of person that like would necessarily like, I mean, I blame bosses or organizations for like how much money I wasn't making, but I typically just leave. Like, I'm the kind of person that's like, well, maybe they don't see my value, or maybe I'm not enough here and I can go be enough somewhere else, and I'll just change the relationship and leave. But the problem is that the not enough-ness comes with me. So it becomes this constant spiral of like, I go into these new places, and I think that blaming myself is that I'm not enough. Like, I'm not enough to make a commitment. I'm not enough to show up powerfully. I'm not enough to. So that's the number one thing that gets in the way is my worth conversation.
Got it.
And the worth conversation.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that live on the podcast too. Yeah. I know it takes.
Oh wait, this is live.
Which
is, my God.
Wow, we're here.
Someone's gonna hear this.
No editing it out. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I can relate on a whole lot, and what I get is that we get to choose where we make commitments from. Like you're kind of sharing, and what I was sharing is, if I'm not conscious where I'm choosing from and how I'm relating to the commitments, then you said for you, what's likely to show up is that it's kind of it's a weird, like, it's like disempowered, but like not all in, but like I'm kind of going to do it. And like the long-term play shows up actually backfiring in the long run. And like you mentioned, even if I leave this one thing and I go on to the next job, the next relationship, the next podcast, like it's going to come with me. The same way that if I go do the same thing, if I were to leave a relationship, that piece of me comes with me in that moment too. So, and I hear that, like, now that's great to know that, because in going into a commitment, I can be aware, you can be aware, wow, this is how my sabotage self will try to make this commitment. And so the opportunity is to create a commitment from a totally different place. And I get that when you were sharing about your Kickstarter, is that your commitment from Kickstarter was not from this sabotage place. It wasn't from a place of the not enough, or it wasn't from a place of the worth. Like it was from, like, I mean, you said joy, but like, what are all the places, the other places that you chose to create that commitment from for you?
No, that commitment was from vision. That was like, I want to see this live in the world, and it's going to happen no matter what it takes. So
nice. Nice.
I would definitely say, like, yeah, I felt it. I mean, I love the work. So it was a commitment made in love. And I think I helped people love it too, or at least the idea of it. So yeah, I wanted to offer some questions to the audience. So I think one of the questions that I'm taking from this is like, what am I committed to right now? What have I been avoiding committing to? What gets in the way of me showing up for my commitments? And where do I make commitments from? So those are my 4 like probing questions that I would love to hear the answers to on Instagram or Facebook, in the Facebook group. So we'll join and share there. But yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And if anybody wants to send, if they got more for themselves than you might be able to fit in a DM on Instagram or something like that, you can feel free to email us at gentlementhepodcast@gmail.com. We're always happy and excited to actually hear what you got for yourself, because these podcast episodes are done through conversation, where we all get to walk away with something that would be valuable for my life, for your life. And I think, Jason, for me, one of the things that I'm walking away from is I'm present to how the shift that I made back in December is really working. My old game that I used to play with myself, it wasn't about what was working or what wasn't working, like whether I was making the impact or whether I wasn't making the impact, but it was actually like, what's wrong? And I got to go fix that thing that's wrong all the time. And so I was so fixated on the problem and this solution and what's wrong that I never gave myself the grace to chunk it down and do it over and over and bring it into reality. And I love that it's actually really making that difference today. And it's humbling. And I also see where my gaps still are. Like even in this conversation, this journey of growth and commitment, if you're willing to be a part of this community, if you see yourself as being a gentle man, this growth happens outside of your comfort zone. And it takes commitment. It takes some of the other stuff we talked about too. It takes vision, it takes intention, it takes commitment, and it takes all the other pillars that we're going to be bringing on future episodes. So that's really what I'm taking, and like really also taking some of the stuff you're saying. Like, look, I'm still avoiding things too. I'm sure I am. Like, I notice at the end of the day when I don't get stuff done. So it's a never ending learning. And that's the thing, is I use it as a tool for learning, not as a tool to beat myself up.
Yes.
Like I have in the past. Really good at it.
No, you're not.
But
you in the past were good at it, maybe, but you're not good at it.
Oh, ooh.
Gotcha.
Nice.
Gotcha.
Oh, I absolutely love that. But yes, absolutely. So let us know what you're taking with you. We plan on bringing more conversations just like this, bringing more videos, doing these things so you get to see us. You get to be in conversation with us as we're even working through some of our own stuff here live. So join us on Instagram. Join us on our private Facebook group. You can search Gentlemen the Podcast on Facebook. Pretty soon we'll be kicking up some new rooms on Clubhouse. And we are committed. Our commitment is to bring valuable conversations, even if we don't feel like it. So we say it here, it's recorded. And if not, we're going to break down, and there's some gold in that too. So that's all I got. Jason, anything else you got?
I just want to say that we're committed to the audience, the community, your growth, your transformation, your healing. No matter how our other commitments show up and how our feelings it's not about how we feel or don't feel, but it's about how, when we play big, how those feelings manifest in our lives. So it's going to happen. Like, stress might show up when you're playing big games, and we're committed to sourcing gratitude when stress shows up, because we're grateful that you're here listening. So that's all I have to say.
Awesome. I love that.
Yay! Episode 5.
All right. Well, we'll wrap this up and see everybody for episode 6. If you haven't, subscribe, rate and review. If you got something valuable for yourself, check us out on Apple, soon to be on Spotify, and all the other channels. And we'll see you soon.